Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, Karen parks illegally taking up 2 disabled spaces, learns a very expensive lesson. I have a disabled parking placard, and a few weeks ago I went to Target to get some things that I needed. Not only were all the spaces taken, someone had parked their gigantic Escalade on the line between 2 disabled spaces, taking up both of them. Wholly irritated because this happens so often, I walked around the car. No placard or disabled plate. Cue the fury of someone who has to deal with this kind of stuff all the time, and cue petty revenge. I took a pic and went inside to find a manager. When I found one, I showed her the photo and she rolled her eyes inside. Apparently, this happens a lot at their location because it's near an affluent town with a lot of very wealthy, very entitled people, and most often it's the owners of huge SUVs and F-150s that park like jerks. She said she'd call the cops, so I decided to go back outside and hang out by the doors to watch the show. The manager joined me and we chatted while we waited for the police. The cops arrived and walked around the car, peering through the windows and running the plate. One cop took out a little book and started writing in it. They took some photos, and one came over and asked if they'd make an announcement in the store to get the driver outside. The manager radioed someone inside and they asked them to announce the make and model and plate of the car over the PA system. A few minutes later, she came charging out of the store. Middle-aged, well-dressed woman, the common Karen of North America, and already yelling at the police. As soon as she got to her car, one of the cops held up his hand to shut her up and started lecturing her. I was too far away to hear, but she stopped yelling at least. The cop spoke to her for a few minutes, and then the other cop with the little book handed her but 2 papers. She looked absolutely insane. The cops came back over and spoke to the manager, saying that they ordered her to move her car, and if she didn't, or if she caused more problems in the store, to call them back and they'd tow the car. They told us they gave her 2 tickets, one for each space, at $500 each. Ouch. The manager thanked the police and me and went back inside. The woman stomped around a bit before getting in her car and peeling out. The cops looked at each other, then got in their cars and followed her. Pretty sure she continued to have the day that she deserved. Meanwhile, I happily treated myself to some Legos for performing a public service. All my friends think my girlfriend is creepy. Are they right? I, 22 male, started dating my girlfriend, let's call her Alice, 21 female, about 7 months ago. We met while working on a group project for one of our college classes. From the moment I met her, I felt an instant connection. She was beautiful, smart, and we shared a bunch of common interests. Long story short, we flirted for a few weeks before I finally asked her out, and we've been happily going out since. Now, here comes the problem. About a month ago, my friends and I were planning to hang out, and I invited Alice. While me and Alice are from the same hometown, we met during college, and a majority of our relationship has been during the school year. While we know each other's college friends, we had never met each other's hometown friends. I know that Alice has really bad social anxiety, so I was hesitant to invite her at first. But when I did ask her, she seemed nervous but really excited. The party seemed to go really well. Alice was smiling and laughing the whole time and even got to go on a rant about a topic she really liked. When it was over, she even told me while I was taking her home how much she liked my friends. When I asked my friends what they thought of Alice, they all said she seemed nice, all except my best friend, Ruben, who's 22. When I asked him, he told me that he couldn't stand her. I immediately questioned why, hoping it was them not mixing well, as I can acknowledge that Ruben and Alice are complete opposites when it comes to interests and personality. But Ruben told me he couldn't stand her because of how creepy she is, and I was better off dumping her. Now this threw me off, as I had never once considered Alice creepy. She's actually the cutest girl I'd ever met, and I've never felt more comfortable around someone than I do around her. Before I could even ask what he meant, he went off on a rant about how uncomfortable she made him feel and started citing stories I told him about our dates during college. Stuff like how she'd stare at me without saying anything and just enjoyed looking at me. How she eats the same meal whenever we go out to dinner. How unjealous she was when a girl came up and flirted with me. Or about her deep knowledge of mysteries and true crime. Both of which she could talk about for hours, but neither of which she actually talked about at the party. He said that while he wrote them off before, since they didn't seem to bother me, which they don't, but that after meeting her in person and seeing how weird and flighty she was, he can tell that she's a secret psycho and will end up either breaking my heart or just hurting me. I tried to explain to him how any weirdness was probably because she was so nervous about meeting them for the first time, But he insisted that we've had friends' significant others have anxiety before and that she was just plain weird. I blew him off at first because he sounded crazy. Alice isn't perfect, but she's far from creepy. But after 2 weeks of him telling me to dump her and me getting tired of telling him to drop it, I reached out to a few of our friends to prove him wrong. But to my surprise, they all agreed that Alice was creepy. Most of them said the way she spoke really threw them off, which is fair since Alice can be weirdly formal sometimes, but I didn't notice her doing that at the party at all, and typically it's much more funny than unsettling. Most of my friends told me it wasn't enough to break up with her since they still genuinely found her sweet and fun to be around, but I did have one friend say that it was worth breaking up over and he was just too embarrassed to tell me at first. I have no plans of breaking up with Alice because all the stuff they're calling creepy I find cute when she does it. But are they right? Is it creepy that she does that stuff? Should I talk to her about it? Should I tell my friends to buzz off and ignore their concerns? I feel bad for even questioning about this, but with all of my friends agreeing, it's starting to gnaw at me, and I just need some clarification if it's actually creepy or if they're just being dramatic. Update. Since I posted originally, I spoke with each of my friends individually, and I talked to them about what they said. Pretty much all of them apologized, and some even offered to apologize to Alice herself, which at the time I said no since I didn't really want them interacting with her, but we'll get back to that later. The only one who didn't apologize, as I'm sure you guessed, was Ruben. I want to address some comments suggesting that Ruben could either be attracted to me or maybe even Alice. I don't think either of those are true, as Alice is the first girlfriend Ruben has ever acted like this with, even though I've dated plenty of girls, and Alice isn't his usual type. He may still be attracted to her. I mean, she is gorgeous, but I've known the guy since 3rd grade, and so I know he's pretty picky about the girls he's into. So I don't think that's the case. I think he's just a major jerk. I've known Ruben literally my whole life, since our moms were college friends and moved close to each other when we were young. With so much history, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt by just asking him to drop it since I really didn't care if he found her creepy. I really like her, and he'd just have to deal with it if he wanted to continue being friends. He didn't apologize or even say he was wrong, but he did agree to stop commenting on it, which isn't perfect, but it works for now, as I consider if I really want to continue being friends with him. Yesterday, I met up with Alice for a casual date. It wasn't anything fancy, just a home picnic. I have really bad allergies, so we couldn't do it outside. We had some candles and our favorite foods, and we watched movies and dissected our favorite tropes. About halfway through our 3rd movie, Alice brought up Ruben since she heard about an upcoming car show and auction her dad told her about, and she remembered me saying that he loved vintage cars and suggested the 3 of us and a friend of hers who was also into cars could go together so she could get to know him better. It felt crazy that she had suggested this days after mine and Ruben's fight, and it made me feel sick with how sweet she was being to a jerk. I gave her some weak excuses about how she hates car shows and doesn't have to do that, or how Ruben wouldn't be comfortable doing that. My girlfriend, being the angel she was, said she could tough through it, or even just let me and Ruben go together if he wasn't comfortable with her yet, or she'd even pay for the tickets because it was a private showing. This was the point I broke, and I told her everything that happened. She took it really well, just calmly listening while I rambled through my explanation, and she even apologized to me about weirding out my friends. I tried to explain it wasn't her fault and she didn't need to apologize. As a lot of you suspected, she ended up telling me how she believed she was autistic, but since she hadn't gotten an official diagnosis, she wasn't comfortable telling people that. After a lot of guilty back and forth between the 2 of us, she told me she didn't want me cutting off my friends since they did apologize and didn't say anything cruel, just pointed out her neurodivergent tendencies, which is not an insult to her. But I put my foot down that I for sure won't be bringing her around Ruben anymore, and I plan to distance myself from him and my other friends for the time being, which she agreed was fair. She also wants to meet up with my friends who want to apologize to her since they seem genuine in their regret. Overall, things turned out pretty well, and thank you so much for your input. Anyone else think that Ruben was talking to the other friends about Alice? Just seems to me that if they were all okay with her at first, and then later agreed with the creepy description, that maybe someone's been in their ears, reframing any of her personal quirks. Alice sounds like a stand-up girl, and she seems really sweet. OP might have just found the perfect one. On a side note, OP's friends really feel nitpicky, especially Ruben. I have a feeling Ruben is jealous about the 2 of them, but who really knows? I found something my ex-husband accused me of destroying, and I returned it. My marriage, we were both in our 30s, this is important, had problems right away. One of the manifestations was him going off on me for not going to an elite university. I went to a very good undergrad and an even better grad school. Had not finished at that point, but he went to one of the best schools in the country, known for graduates with a chip on their shoulder. That was really all he had on me, and I would just laugh. Even his parents told him he was being a jerk and sounded like an idiot because I had an impressive education, something I had never felt the need to discuss before. So anyway, he became really competitive about his college, and especially his friends from college. Very few he was still in touch with. This was before Facebook. And he had this photo box full of memorabilia. Cardboard, no lock or anything. I had a dozen or so myself. A normal thing would be to go through his and mine together and share memories and stories and bond. I didn't really care about what was in his box, and college stories are boring when you weren't there, but I would have listened. But the box became a symbol of everything wrong, with him constantly saying I'm not good enough for his college friends. At some point, he forbid me to look in the box. Of course, I didn't take this well. He kept telling me I wasn't good enough to see what was in the box. It got brought up in every fight, like a death spiral of, "You're jealous of my friends. Your friends suck and I wouldn't like them anyway." Fast forward through years of fighting. We moved on to more spectacular fights, and the box fell pretty far down the list. Then for some reason one day he went up to the attic and couldn't find his box. He said I threw it away because I was jealous and petty. I didn't, but after a few years of this, he managed to convince me that maybe I did. "And you threw away my box," went back into heavy rotation. I begged his forgiveness and fell into deeper depression over the depths to which my life had sunk. Finally got a divorce. Cops, ROs, the whole nine. I healed and moved on. Years later, I sold my house. It was mine before, and when I was packing up, I found the box. I had such an emotional reaction, my legs buckled. I sat on the floor and wept. My boyfriend was really sweet about it. He didn't know about the box. It's so ridiculous, and I was so ashamed, but mostly I had put it all behind me by then, until it all came rushing back. I called a mutual friend and asked him to come get the box so they could give it to him. People suggested I should throw it away out of spite, but I had something to prove. Before I turned it over, I put copies of 2 unpublished essays I wrote about what he did to me, along with a handwritten note. "I sold your Dungeons & Dragons books." I just found out that my husband was married when we started dating and had our baby. My husband and I just celebrated our 4th wedding anniversary. We have a kid together. Long story short, I recently found out that my husband was not only married when we started dating, but his divorce wasn't actually finalized until our son was almost 6 months old. I know this story sounds weird, but 6 years ago I started dating this guy. He was from somewhere else, but he was in my town for a year-long military assignment. He told me he had a horrible ex-wife who cheated on him for over half of their 10-year-long marriage. I felt so bad for him, and all of his friends and family members corroborated his story and told me how great he was and how awful she was, etc. This guy moved in with me very quickly because his room on base was disgusting and moldy, and despite being on the Nuva ring, I ended up getting pregnant, and he proposed a few months later. It all happened super fast, but I was wildly in love, and I didn't think anything was wrong with my happy little family until one day, out of the total blue, I received a Facebook message from his ex-wife, calling me a homewrecker and calling my newborn son names. I was so confused. This guy was definitely not married when we started dating, or so I thought. I never replied to her message, but I confronted my then fiance about it, and he assured me that she's crazy and she's the one who had cheated on him, etc. Again, all his friends and his mother verified his story, saying his ex-wife was the cheater and their marriage was 100% over when he and I got together. So anyway, flash forward to a couple of months ago. Hubby and I just celebrated 4 years of marriage, and I thought everything was great. I loved the life that we had built together, and I had entirely forgotten about the ex-wife thing. One day, out of the total blue, I had this weird feeling that I should check her Facebook page. Again, it had been years since I had even thought about this woman, and I have no idea what compelled me to check her page. So anyways, I went to go check it, and several months before, she had written this awful, scathing post about me, calling me and my son all kinds of names, and saying that soon my husband is going to do to me what he did to her, because he's a narcissist who doesn't care who he hurts. I sent her a message saying I was so sorry that she misunderstood what happened, but I was certainly not a homewrecker, and my precious son is definitely not the name she was calling him, and I asked her to please take down the post. She responded, "No, leave me alone." And I said, "I'm not super inclined to do that unless you remove the post." Again, I'm so sorry for any misunderstanding, but he and I didn't start dating until this date. Much to my shock and dismay, she replied with lots and lots of proof that they were indeed still married at that time. I started digging and found his divorce record. It does say that he was not legally divorced until our son was nearly 6 months old. I guess I now understand why he wanted a 2-year-long engagement. So anyway, what do I do with this info now? If I confront him about it, he will obviously know the info came from her and he'll be angry with me for messaging her. I've been trying to pretend like I don't know and that everything is fine, but it's eating me up. He has obviously lied to me about this before, repeatedly and to my face, so if I confront him, I feel like he's going to lie again. I now know that I can't trust him. I don't think he's lied to me about anything else, but if he would lie about this, what else would he lie about? This is a big lie. I do now worry that he will do the same thing to me, like his ex-wife's post said. I do also think there could be, and probably is, a lot more to the story. Maybe she did cheat first. I don't know. But even if she did, and even if him getting with me was retaliation for her actions, I'm not at all sure that would be enough for me to trust him again moving forward. This is just over, right? I don't know how to get past all of this. I've always told my friends to never date a cheater because how you get them is how you lose them. Tell him in a public place that you found out he was still married when you got together, and if there's anything he can tell you that might make you trust him again, now's the time. If his reaction is to get angry with you, or to argue with you, or otherwise deflect, then you should take that as a confirmation that he has no defense for what he did. You don't have to sit there and argue with him or defend yourself. Nothing you did is worse than what he did. You don't have to convince him of that. You just have to stand up and leave and move forward with your own plans, which should include prioritizing your kid and getting a good lawyer ASAP. You should also be prepared for the possibility that he may just lie. If he starts offering some sob story to justify his actions, listen to your gut. Don't tell yourself to just accept a story that doesn't feel right or doesn't make you feel secure or doesn't totally make sense. I'm sorry you're going through this. Good luck. He lied to you, and so did his family. Big lies. You need a job and your own savings account in a bank he doesn't have access to. You should be prepared. Question: was he legally divorced when you got married? Before you confront him, I would seriously consider speaking with a divorce attorney. You want to make sure you're fully protected, and the best time to do that is before the other party is aware you know of their lies. I would also speak with my attorney about the conversation with the ex-wife and turn over copies of that conversation for them to hang on to so it can be deleted off your devices. You don't want him to snoop through your accounts, find something, and angrily take it out on you. Well, what do you think? Should OP divorce her husband or not? Please let us know. Oh, I'm on private property? I used to work for a supermarket chain, and quite often I'd be asked by management to work at other locations. Most of the time this wasn't a big deal. I was happy to help out. It gave me an excuse to drive and have the petrol paid for. However, one day I was asked to work at a location very far away at the very early hour of the morning. I initially refused on the grounds that I would have to wake up at around 2 a.m. in order to have a shower, breakfast, and drive to be there on site at 5 a.m. After some arm-bending from management, I finally relented and begrudgingly agreed I would do it. Due to the drive not taking nearly as long as I initially expected, I arrived on location at about 4:30 a.m. I waited in my car with the music playing. At 4:50 a.m., I get a loud knock on my car window, nearly making me jump out of my skin. It was the manager for that store, who, never seen me before, didn't know who I was. The conversation went as follows. Manager: you need to leave. This is private property. Me: oh, but… interrupting me: I don't care. Go, now. Me, quickly realizing I can play this to my advantage: oh, I'm sorry, sir. I don't want any problems. Of course, I'll go. Right away. Sorry. As per his request, I drove home with a smile on my face, knowing that I have the rest of the day free to myself. A few hours later, I get a phone call. I answer the unrecognized number, and I recognize the voice immediately. It was the manager who told me to leave. Manager: hello, I'm looking for OP. Me: hi, yeah, that's me. Manager: this is management calling from the store. I was expecting you to work with me today. You should have been here at 5 a.m. Me, trying to sound casual: yeah, I was there waiting in my car. You told me to leave, remember? But you didn't say… I interrupt him. There's no ifs or buts. I was on private property and was asked to leave. I was legally obliged to do so. Yeah, but don't you think… It doesn't matter what I thought. I was asked to leave private property. I'm not going to break the law and risk getting into trouble with the police. It was at this point he hung up on me. I expected to get in trouble for what had happened, but I never heard anything more about it. This was a few years back now, too. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. I hope you enjoyed it. Am I the jerk for demanding my husband quit his job? A year ago, my husband got a really great job. He loves it. It more than doubled our income. The problem is he's never here. It requires a lot of travel, and he's gone more of the month than he's home. We have 3 kids who are 8, 6, and 3. We have 2 dogs. I am run ragged. I don't have any family to help me. I don't have time for friends. It's never ending. Cleaning, kids, cooking, dogs, school, cooking. No time for me whatsoever. Before my husband got this job, we worked opposite schedules. I worked in a restaurant/bar in the evenings. Didn't pay great, but a couple really good friends worked there with me. It was how I socialized. Now that he's gone, I couldn't work that job since nobody watches the kids at night. Now I work a part-time retail job that I hate with coworkers who are essentially kids compared to me. I don't get to socialize like I used to. I only work the hours my kids are in school. But we have after-school activities, homework, dogs, dinner, never-ending chores, etc. There's no time for me. I don't even get to sleep alone since my 6-year-old has night terrors. When my husband was here, things felt more divided. I still did a lot during the day, but it wasn't never-ending. There would still be days I didn't have to worry about lunches or bath time or homework because my husband would pick up the slack. I could go out with friends from time to time. Don't even get me started on what it's like when the kids get sick, and then I inevitably get sick too. It's absolute misery, and he's not around to see it. I'm left drowning. But he doesn't want to quit. He loves his job, and that's fair. I can see he's way happier now. But what about me? Don't I matter? I don't know how I'm supposed to get through this. I demanded for the sake of my sanity he quit his job, but he exploded. He thinks we're doing better than ever. We could get a bigger house soon. We live in a 2-bedroom rancher, but I like it. That the kids will have so many more opportunities, etc. And he's not wrong. But what about me? Am I the jerk? Update. I just got off the phone with my husband. We talked for a while. Naturally, he's quite upset and is rather defensive, but he is very sorry. That's not an easy thing for him to say, yet he said it very clearly multiple times. He's going to try to catch a flight home tomorrow. He's going to take a week or 2 off work to help me get some things set up in place for me, help around the house and some babysitting. He encouraged me to take some time off work as well and to just stop thinking about finances for right now. He said he'll deal with it for a while. He says whenever I go back to work, it won't be like it was. He will help me. He'll make sure I have some extra money and extra time. I would cry with relief. I am crying with relief. If income is doubled, it's time for some hired help. Why not hire childcare and/or cleaning services a couple of evenings a week? No jerks here, but hire regular house cleaners, order a meal kit subscription service, work smarter, not harder, hire a babysitter from time to time, and meet with friends. Yeah, of course he loves it. His responsibilities just got halved. Quit the job, then you'll have time for you. He doesn't want to quit, then you quit. If you're doing better than ever, then he can afford to get you a babysitter from time to time while you go out for an actual social life. Or you can have somebody come in every week or 2 to at least help you keep your home in order and at least take a little off your plate of responsibilities. Not the jerk. You're the jerk. How about you 2 switch it up? You could go earn a high income to provide for the family and let hubby stay home with the kids. Something tells me he'd be able to get them to school on time and vacuum the house here and there since it's just too much for you to handle. And you gotta love these idiots that always say to hire help. These stay-at-home moms who complain on Reddit don't need hired help. They just need to stop so much TV and wasting time on Facebook. Well, what do you think? Should OP's husband quit his job or not? Please let us know. The old bait and switch. Once upon a time, I, like many people after the new year, joined Planet Fitness with my girlfriend, now wife. We did not go to the gym, and this continued now that we had a gym membership. After a year or so had gone by of not going to the gym, we decided to go in one day just for something to do. They wouldn't let us in due to the card that we used for my wife's membership had expired, and our account was due over $100. They agreed that we could go in as long as we got it under $100. We paid the remaining amount and canceled her membership, switching mine to a premium membership so that we could both get on using mine. After probably another year of them collecting my money for little in return, I joined the Army as a way to escape the ever-rising cost of family health insurance. I thought, this is great. Now I have a reason to work out, and I'll use my Planet Fitness Premium membership that lets me use any of their gyms around the country. However, upon moving to our first duty station, I found that 1. I worked out every morning with a group of people outside, and 2. There are several gyms on base, usually nicer than Planet Fitness. So I went to cancel my membership, and here's where they really upset me. Oh, you have to cancel in person at your home gym, or by writing a cancellation letter via first-class mail to your home gym. The problem being that my home gym was over 700 miles away, and I didn't want to wait long enough for them to get the letter and process it. I left and began my Planet Fitness contract research. Armed with knowledge, I returned to the closest store the next day. Good morning, sir. Oh, good morning. Can you help me out? I don't necessarily want to pay for the black membership anymore, but my home gym is in Ohio. Can I change my home gym to this one? Of course, sir. I'd be happy to assist you. Once all the exchanging of information had been completed, I dropped the bomb. Is there anything else I can help you with? Yes. Actually, since this is my home gym now, I'd like to go ahead and cancel my membership. Her jaw actually dropped. She called a manager to give the overrides or whatever he needed to do. He got the whole story, looked at me, and said that I would have to wait 24 hours since I just changed my home gym. I obliged his request and came back the next day. I'm happy to say that it's been almost 5 years since my last gym membership. Am I the jerk for telling my stepsister it's not my fault my dad doesn't love her? I'm 24, female. My dad is married to a woman I'll call Melissa, and they've been married for 13 years. Melissa has a daughter, Sarah, who's 25. I didn't live with my dad full-time growing up. My parents had shared custody, but it was pretty flexible, so I'd spend on average 2 nights there a week, and my dad would normally take me to dinner 1 evening a week. I have never had much of a relationship with Melissa, but we've always been friendly. Sarah, on the other hand, has always been jealous of me and my relationship with my dad. Anything I was doing, she wanted to do. Anywhere I was going with my dad, she wanted to come along. My dad always handled it, but I was always aware that she was clearly unhappy when I was around. My dad and I spoke about this more than once, and my dad expressed that he found Sarah always expecting things from him a bit stressful, and that he had brought it up with Melissa, but it didn't seem to help. I haven't seen Sarah much in the last few years since I moved away, but I recently got engaged, so my fiance and I had dinner with my dad, Melissa, Sarah, and her fiance to celebrate. My dad made a toast and said he'd like to pay for the wedding. He then presented us with a check. I thanked him, but said we will be paying for the wedding ourselves. My dad said he wanted to contribute to our lives in some way, and my fiance suggested we could put the money into a trust for our future kid. We then continued on with dinner. The next day, I got a call from Sarah, who said I should split the money my dad gave me for the wedding with her. I was confused and asked why, and Sarah said that my dad is a father figure to both of us. I told her if my dad wanted to give her money, he would have, and that it has nothing to do with me. Sarah started getting mad and said that I should share the money since I didn't need it. She went off on me, called me mean, spoiled, a gold digger, all sorts. She then said that it was my fault she never had a dad, and I need to share the money and admit that my dad is her dad too. I was just getting so annoyed, and I said, "It's not my fault he doesn't love you. If you want money from him, go ask him," and I hung up on her. I guess she did ask him because my dad called and got mad at me for blowing up on her, saying I didn't have to be that harsh with her. He said it's caused a lot of drama between him and Melissa and Sarah. He said I didn't have to respond to Sarah's goading, and maybe that's true, but I don't think I'm the jerk for saying what he was too scared to, especially when I was being blamed for something that has nothing to do with me. Not the jerk. Your stepsister clearly has some issues that are no one's responsibility but hers. I hope for the sake of her fiancé and future kids that she deals with them. I'm also amused that she called you a gold digger when she was the one who called you up and demanded you give her money. As for your father's troubles, this is something that he should have nipped in the bud a long time ago. I don't know where Sarah's father is or if he's alive, but it was never realistic on her part to expect your father to take his place, and that should have been made clear to her from the beginning. Maybe she should have been in therapy or something. Am I the jerk for shutting off my fiance's computer while he was playing his video games in my son's room at 1:30 in the morning? When we moved back to my family's house about a year ago, my fiance set up his gaming PC station in my elementary school-age son's room since we have such a limited amount of space. He's not my son's biological father. My fiance and I have a baby and who sleeps in our room, so there's literally no space at all in our bedroom. I agreed to let him have his computer and desk in my son's room as it was the only room out of the two with just enough space. My fiance has always claimed that gaming stops him from going out to bars or spending extra money we don't have. Since moving back, I stressed to him that I don't want him to play late at night because I don't want him to disrupt my son's sleep and affect his circadian rhythm. Over the past year, my fiance hasn't respected my request as he's continued to play video games till pretty late at night, sometimes up to 4 a.m. on weekends. Whenever I bring it up to my fiance, my son always insists that he doesn't mind that my fiance is playing games in his room. My son probably enjoys the company, but he also makes a pillow wall around his face to block the bright lights every night. It bothers me since I know my son could be getting a better night's sleep without a mouse and keyboard clicking away with constant bright flashing lights from the computer monitor. About a month ago, I caught my fiance vaping in my son's room while playing video games while my son was asleep. I lost my marbles at my fiance and told him how he doesn't give a crap about my son's health or sleep. He claimed he doesn't believe in circadian rhythm. I made a very big deal out of this and gave him an ultimatum that he needed to stop gaming late at night and to never vape in my son's room again, or we're done. He promised to stop and has been pretty consistent by stopping at 10 p.m. and not vaping that I'm aware of. Well, last night I heard mumbling from my son's room, which woke me up around 1:30 a.m. and it brought rage to me. I demanded that my fiance get off his game, and he said he was almost done, just 20 more minutes until the match was over. I told him to get out of my son's room or I would be turning off the computer. I ended up pushing the power button to turn it off. Am I the jerk for turning off my fiance's computer during his match? I know my son claims he doesn't care that my fiance plays in his room. As his mom, I want my son to get a good night's rest. Additionally, my fiance never wakes up early to help me out with our kid and sleeps until 10:30 a.m. or later every single weekend. Edit. Fiance saw this post. He is actively packing his stuff and leaving. Not the jerk on that occasion, but you are the jerk for ever allowing him in your son's room to play video games all night and disturb your son. Plus the vaping? What? He's not even his dad. I'd ditch the guy pronto. Your kid deserves better. Not the jerk. Why are you staying with this man? He has to play video games or he'll spend all the money and go out to the bar? Nope. Either he pulls his head out of his rear and behaves like a responsible adult who respects you and your kids, or he finds a new place to live. Those are his options. OP. I don't know why I'm staying anymore. I feel miserable and do 90% of all parenting and of all the cooking and cleaning, etc. Video game addictions are real. He really needs help. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiance? Please let us know. What a disrespectful dude. Glad to hear he hit the road. Stop blaming the person I'm training for the rookie mistakes he's been making? Very well. I used to work as a temp in a cardboard factory. I started out assisting the machine operators in their work, but after the person who managed the materials, cutting forms, printing stamps, and ink, who henceforth shall be referred to as Dave, was forced to take a week off. Paid vacation he was forced to take before the end of the year, and the end of the year rush was coming up. And things went south because the floor managers couldn't keep up with his job and their own at the same time. The company decided we needed a second person to do Dave's job to avoid situations like that in the future. They tested several people by having them work together with Dave for a couple of hours, and apparently I was the only one who did a decent job, and so I was told that Dave would be training me. I was never asked if I was interested. I didn't even know they were looking for someone to help Dave until I arrived at work one Monday and my schedule said I would be working with Dave. Of course, I didn't mind, because since I was already capable of helping operate 8 of the 10 machines in the factory, I figured this was a great way to further solidify an actual contract with the company. Now, during his week off, Dave had met a woman and they had started dating. She would constantly text him while he was at work, and it showed in his productivity. Of course, COO figured his drop in productivity was because I was slowing him down. As time went on, Dave's girlfriend moved in with him. Now, I haven't mentioned this yet, but the factory had a 2-shift system, early shift and late shift. Most of us worked in rotating shifts, but Dave had a fixed early shift because he had to be there on Monday mornings. Now, this meant Dave and his girlfriend could never go out on weekends and even had to go to bed quite early. So Dave requested to be put back on rotating shifts once he had finished training me. The COO said he would look into it, but kept giving Dave excuses. So Dave started interviewing for another job. Then came the day me and Dave were called into the COO's office and got yelled at for not pulling our weight and stuff like that. One of the things mentioned was repeated tardiness. Dave couldn't deny that one. He had overslept several times in the last few months, but I had only been tardy once because of a flat tire. So wanting to set the record straight, I tried to interject about my flat tire, and the COO snapped at me to keep my trap shut while he's talking. So after his rant and he dismisses us from his office, I once again bring up the flat tire, and then he just snaps at me again that I should have just avoided having a flat tire. That was the last drop for Dave. He got home, wrote his letter of resignation, mailed it to the COO, and accepted one of the job offers he had gotten that week. For the next 3 months, I'm stuck doing all the work on my own. Also during this time, due to a change in the laws in my country, I might become homeless unless I get a contract. So I start asking the COO for a contract, since I've been there 2.5 years as a temp at this point. Just like with Dave, he keeps giving me excuses. After an incident with them refusing any vacation time request I put in that included a Monday, they finally gave me someone to train to be my second. Let's call him Abdul. About a month after I started training Abdul, I get called into the floor manager's office. Apparently, a mistake was made somewhere, and he asks me how it happened. Now that was the first week I was letting Abdul work independently without me constantly telling him what to do. So I tell the floor manager that Abdul had done that job and I had not yet had the chance to inspect his work. The manager grumbles but just dismisses me. A week later, I get called in again for a similar situation. So after I point out that Abdul is learning and mistakes will be made. So this time, the manager blows up at me that I have to stop blaming everything on Abdul, and if I blame one more mistake on Abdul being a rookie, he's getting me fired. This is where the compliance comes in. Around this time, me and Abdul were put in opposing shifts. My first order of business every day would be to double check all of Abdul's work and fix any mistakes. I couldn't inform him of his mistakes, so he kept making them. Abdul also started to get sneaky. You see, part of our tasks had to be done in an area of the factory where only the two of us would frequently go. So Abdul would do all of the work that was to be done where people could see him work, leaving me with all the tasks behind the scenes, meaning I was never anywhere to be found. We also had these big barrels of ink, which were hooked up to a machine that mixed the basic colors of ink into other colors. Abdul had always refused to change these barrels when they were empty. He would usually state he hadn't had time, even though making sure those barrels aren't empty was a priority job. This eventually all culminates into a moment about 8 months after Dave left, where I am once again called into the COO's office. I'm thinking I'm finally getting my contract after 3 years as a temp. I'm also convinced Abdul got a contract the week before, though Abdul and the COO have always denied that. Instead, I'm told I'm fired. The COO also goes out of his way to inform me that he's been wanting to fire me for 6 months now because he blames me for Dave quitting, but was asked not to by the floor managers until I had trained someone to replace me, and they considered Abdul to be ready to do the job now. He also told me that he did appreciate the work I did. He just had a problem with me personally. After my meeting with the COO, I make my round of the factory to inform my coworkers that I've been fired and to say goodbye. The look on Abdul's face was pure panic. He suddenly realized that despite me demonstrating how to change those ink barrels, he had never actually done it himself, and as such, didn't remember how to do it. A week after I left, I got a message from one of my former coworkers that the entire factory was looking to go to the COO's office and demand they rehire me, because Abdul was not only doing a poor job, but he was also being a megalomaniac. I told her not to bother, because if they did rehire me, it would only make the COO hate me even more. Several months after, another former coworker informed me that not even a month after I was fired, Abdul was demoted back to assistant machine operator, and one of the floor managers had to take over his tasks full-time. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.